Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video.
On May 29, 1945, a U.S. Army Air Force's B-29 Superfortress bomber from the 29th Bombardment Group based in Guam embarked on a mission to bomb the Tachiari airfield near Fukuoka, Japan. What began as a routine operation ended in tragedy, leaving an indelible mark on the history of World War II. The story of this ill-fated crew is one of unimaginable suffering, resilience, and unanswered questions, a stark reminder of the human cost of war. Under the command of Aircraft Commander First Lieutenant Marvin Watkins, the B-29 crew took off with a clear objective: to strike a critical Japanese military target. Disaster struck after they were able to successfully complete their bombing run. The aircraft was hit by a Japanese fighter flown by Kunzo Kasuya as they turned away from the target, igniting a fire in its No. 4 engine and gas tank. With the situation rapidly deteriorating, the crew had no choice but to abandon the plane. All 11 men parachuted out before the aircraft exploded. While some landed near the crash site, others drifted farther away. Unbeknownst to them, their fates would diverge dramatically in the hours and days that followed. One of the American airmen met a tragic end when the cords of his parachute were severed by a Japanese plane, causing him to plummet to his death. Another airman survived the descent, but found himself surrounded by hostile villagers upon landing. Determined not to be captured, he fired all but one of his bullets at the approaching crowd, before using the final round on himself. According to Toshio Kai, a high school teacher who has dedicated years to investigating the events described in Dr. Toshio Tono's book of the event, 2 other airmen were quickly stabbed or shot to death shortly after reaching the ground. The remaining were captured by Japanese forces. Among them was First Lieutenant Marvin Watkins, the aircraft commander, who was separated from his crew and transported to Tokyo's Kempei headquarters for interrogation. There he endured severe beatings, starvation, and deprivation of medical care. Watkins spent the remainder of the war in Horse Stall Cell 6, alongside 15 other American airmen, including notable prisoners such as Walter W. Dickerson, Frank G. Massey, Maynard B. Hanks, David G. Farquhar, Franklin S. Green, and Walter W. Wernick from the 6th Bombardment Group. For Watkins' surviving crewmen, however, the outcome was far more sinister. They were taken to Kyushu Imperial University's College of Medicine, where, under the custody of a military physician, they became victims of one of the most egregious war crimes of the Pacific Theater: vivisection. Teddy Panchko was the first of the crew to be experimented on. The doctor took out one of his lungs to see if he could still breathe with a lung missing. Then they closed the wound shut. According to Dr. Tono, who witnessed the vivisection, Panchko was under the impression that he was pushed into the operating room for help since he had a stab wound near his shoulder. The American was not expecting to be part of human experimentation at Kyushu Imperial University. From there, Panchko was tested from one experiment to the next. In one experiment, Panchko was given intravenous injections of seawater to determine if it could replace saline. Ultimately, Panchko bled to death. Then it came time for other Americans. Their lungs, livers, hearts, and other organs were removed to study the survival rate without organs. According to witnesses, the scientists kept the Americans alive to observe their responses. These are the crew members who were confirmed to be vivisected: Lieutenant William R. Fredericks, co-pilot; Lieutenant Dale Plambach, radar navigator; Sergeant Teddy Panchko, flight engineer; Corporal John Kohlhauer, gunner; Sergeant Chernecki, tail gunner; Robert Williams, radio operator. Their bodies were mutilated beyond recognition, and their remains were cremated by the staff members of the anatomy department. After the war, the Americans who were vivisected were listed as killed by the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, which was a ploy used by the Japanese military to cover up medical atrocities during the war. Captain Marvin Watkins stands as the sole survivor of the doomed mission. His captivity in Omori POW camp spared him from the horrors inflicted upon his comrades at Kyushu. Despite enduring months of torture, starvation, and isolation, Watkins maintained his resolve and provided vital testimony after the war about the fate of his crewmates. Upon liberation on August 29, 1945, Watkins returned to the United States, where he spent years searching for answers about what happened to his fellow airmen. Though he never received definitive confirmation, his account played a crucial role in exposing the atrocities committed by Japanese doctors and holding some perpetrators accountable during the Yokohama war crimes trials. This was the list of crew members and their fate. Watkins, pilot, taken to Tokyo, interrogated, and interned at Omori POW camp, released at the end of the war. Fredericks, co-pilot, died during vivisection experiment. Shingledecker, bombardier, place and means of death unknown. Kearns, navigator, died in vicinity of crash site. Plambeck, radar navigator, died during vivisection experiment. Johnson, left gunner, died in vicinity of crash site. Ponchka, engineer, died during vivisection experiment. Williams, radio operator, died during vivisection experiment. Zernacki, tail gunner, died during vivisection experiment. Oinchik, right gunner, died in vicinity of crash site. Kohlhauer, nose gunner, died during vivisection experiment. Immediately following the war, 996 Japanese war criminals from across the Pacific Theater were tried by the U.S. Eighth Army at Yokohama. Of these, 854 defendants were convicted, including 124 receiving death sentences. However, only 51 of the death sentences were carried out. Among those executed was Lieutenant Sadamu Mutokwa, the officer in charge of prisoner physical care at Tokyo Kempei headquarters, who was hanged for his crimes. At Kyushu Imperial University, 30 doctors and military staff were tried for their roles in vivisections and wrongful removal of body parts from the 6 airmen. Of these, 23 were convicted of vivisection and related atrocities. Lieutenant General Isamu Yokoyama, who commanded the medical experiments, along with 2 military officers and 3 doctors, were initially sentenced to death, but later reprieved. 4 others received life sentences. Notably, Emperor Hirohito escaped prosecution entirely. General Douglas MacArthur, recognizing the emperor's symbolic importance in stabilizing post-war Japan, chose to shield him from accountability to minimize anti-American sentiment and facilitate Allied occupation and reconstruction efforts. However, in 1949, President Harry Truman abruptly ended the war crimes trials, prioritizing Japan as a strategic ally against the spread of communism in Asia at the onset of the Cold War. In 1952, President Eisenhower signed Executive Order 10613, allowing for the possibility of clemency or parole for those convicted of war crimes. By 1958, all Japanese war crimes prisoners had been paroled when MacArthur returned governmental authority to the Japanese.